Before climbers could conquer Everest, others set out to measure it, armed not with ropes, but cameras and theodolites, chasing a perfect map through clouds, cold, and the unknown.
It's 2:20 a.m. I'm still buried in the Himalayan Club Journals, century-old field notes from the Himalayas. It's like diving deep into the documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s. The journals cover everything, from indigenous wisdom, cultural myths, to epic expeditions and groundbreaking discoveries. These forgotten stories are brought to life by synthetic voices in the Himalayan Journals podcast. Subscribe, zone out, binge, and pass it to a fellow mountain junkie.
What kind of map could capture the world's highest mountain with the precision scientists demanded in the 1930s? In 1935, the Royal Geographical Society believed the answer lay in photogrammetry, the science of making maps from photographs. When Eric Shipton's reconnaissance expedition to Mount Everest was assembled at short notice that spring, the Society seized the chance to send Michael Spender to carry out a photographic survey of the mountain. He had only 3 weeks to gather instruments and pack them before leaving England at the end of April. Without the generous help of several firms, he later admitted, he would never have reached Tibet at all. The party did not begin its journey in high spirits. The expedition was planned during the monsoon, a time when the earlier reconnaissance of 1921 had struggled with clouds and heavy snow. That expedition, however, had returned with valuable results, including Major Wheeler's photographic map of Everest. Spender's task was to improve upon it, this time with stereo photogrammetric methods that allowed a three-dimensional sense of the terrain. The old technique of single photographs from scattered stations was too slow and uncertain, though it had produced useful maps of the Canadian Rockies and the Everest region itself. For the 1935 expedition, Spender and Mr. Hinks devised a light system combining a Leica miniature camera with a Watts Mountain theodolite. It was portable, weighing less than 20 pounds, and simple enough for mountaineers to use. On the voyage across the Indian Ocean, theodolite classes were held on deck. The leader, Shipton, along with Warren and Kempson, grew enthusiastic about map-making, and in the field they carried the instrument to summits that Spender himself might never have reached. Spender also had heavier equipment, the wild photo theodolite used by Major Mason in 1926, together with a Zeiss camera on loan from the Danish Geodetic Institute. The Survey of India supplied another wild theodolite and a new lightweight sub-tense bar for base measurements. With these instruments, he hoped to cover both inaccessible stations and the great Wrongbook Valley directly below Everest. The expedition reached Wrongbook on the 4th of July, 1935, just after a spell of stormy weather. Everest and its neighbors gleamed in fresh snow under a cloudless sky. From base camp, Spender began a survey assisted by Tawang and Angtsering. Stations were placed on both sides of the valley. To reach the western side, they waded the glacier stream before dawn, through water so cold he later described it as the most unpleasant part of Himalayan travel. He added stations in a poorly mapped side valley east of base camp and near Camp Y, before joining the climbers at Camp the Third. When attempts on the North Col were abandoned, the mountaineers split into smaller groups. With Kempson and Warren, Spender explored the glacier branching toward Kartagangri. They climbed several peaks, including Kartagangri itself, at 23,070 feet. Their last camp called Spitzbergen Camp, stood beside a lake at an ice cliff, reminiscent of an Arctic ice cap. There, Spender fell ill with dysentery-like symptoms. Supplies also ran short, but two Sherpas made a demanding journey to Karta village and back with food. The party then returned to base camp. Later, after a visit to Camp 2, the team gathered for a survey around the survey of India's peak 22,150, which they named Dent Blanche. Here, they touched the edge of existing maps, so vague that even identifying valleys proved difficult. Work was cut short by the persistence of the monsoon. Plans for further surveys in the Nyono-ri range and along the Sikkim border had to be abandoned. The results were complex. Stereo photogrammetric plotting was delayed for lack of apparatus, but triangulation could be drawn, though errors in older surveys meant rechecking many points. Spender also attempted to combine his work with photographs from the Houston Everest expedition of 1933. Those flights carried several cameras, but only the vertical images were taken with calibrated instruments, limiting their use. Still, the ground photographs yielded useful height data for Everest, Makalu, and Chamlang. Perhaps the most lasting achievement was not the maps alone, but the introduction of photographic survey techniques to climbers like Shipton, Kempson, and Warren. Mountaineers, Spender observed, already thought in maps, visualizing country ahead as a surveyor might. With simple instruments, they quickly became skilled geographers. The Watts Leica photo theodolite, small and light, was adopted with enthusiasm and used again in the Himalaya the following summer. In the years ahead, vast regions of the Himalaya would be mapped through photography, just as alpine clubs in Europe had pressed for accurate surveys of their peaks. The 1935 Reconnaissance helped set that pattern. A map of the north face of Everest, published soon after, drew on the expedition's photographs as well as earlier material. The finished result, compiled with care by Mr. Milne of the Royal Geographical Society, stood as both a technical achievement and a tribute to those who carried cameras and theodolites into the high, cloud-bound valleys of Tibet.